The cost of living in America is making millions of people give up, and I want to use that word deliberately because give up is different from struggle. Struggling means you are still fighting. Giving up means you stopped. And here is what I need you to know before anything else. If you turn 65 in this country and enroll in Original Medicare, it does not cover your teeth. It does not cover your eyes. It does not cover hearing aids. A new Calpri found that 1 in 5 adults of Medicare age face over $2,000 a year in out-of-pocket costs for services Medicare simply will not pay for. A single crown can run over $1,500. Hearing aids run $2,000 to $6,000 a pair. In Texas, car insurance rose almost 61% in 5 years, and so people stop going. They skip the dentist. They do not replace the glasses. They live with the hearing loss. Not because they are careless, because the arithmetic told them no. That is what giving up actually looks like, and there is something in this video that will save some of you thousands of dollars. Giving up is the accurate word, and it does not look like what you think. Let me start by describing what this actually looks like, because when people hear that Americans are giving up, they picture somebody quitting a job and moving into the woods. That is not it. Almost nobody does that. Giving up in 2026 looks like a series of small, quiet, individually reasonable decisions that add up to a life getting narrower. It looks like a man who has worked for the same company 15 years, who got promoted, who did everything he was told to do, sitting in his car in the parking lot at 41 years old, wondering out loud whether the traditional path of working still adds up. He has not quit. He is going in tomorrow. But something inside him has already let go of the belief that the effort produces the result, and once that belief goes, it does not easily come back. It looks like a teacher with 24 years in and a master's degree, bringing home $4,200 a month, doing the math on what her daughter's sport costs, and quietly deciding she cannot support the thing her kid is genuinely good at. She is not giving up on her daughter. She is giving up on one specific dream, and she will give up on another one next year. It looks like a woman in nursing school, working, cleaning houses on the side, driving for a delivery app, with 3 bills past due, saying out loud that maybe she should just quit school and go back to work full-time. That is the exact moment, not a dramatic collapse. A person who is doing everything right, deciding that the path out is too expensive to keep walking. And it looks like somebody standing in a grocery aisle, looking at a package of watermelon, doing arithmetic, and putting it back. Here is why I want to name this precisely. Economists measure participation. They measure whether you are employed, whether you are in the labor force, whether you are spending. Those are the numbers that get reported. There is no statistic for the moment a person stops believing the effort is worth it. That decision does not show up anywhere. It shows up years later, in the business that never got started, the degree never finished, the house never bought, the child never had, the treatment never sought. And that is why this particular kind of damage is so dangerous. It compounds silently. Now, I want to be careful here, because there is a version of this conversation that just tells you everything is hopeless and leaves you there, and I think that version does real harm. People who conclude that nothing matters make worse decisions than people who are simply struggling. They stop opening the mail, they stop going to the doctor, they stop applying, and every one of those choices makes the next month harder. So my aim in the rest of this is specific. I am going to walk you through several of the costs that are pushing people to that point, with real numbers, and in each case I am going to tell you the part that is actually within your control, because in several of these, there is genuinely money sitting on the table that people do not know about. Some of what is happening to you is structural and you cannot fix it from your kitchen table, and some of it is a gap in information that a 15-minute phone call closes. The trick is knowing which is which, and almost nobody has been told. Car insurance in Texas rose almost 61% in 5 years, and nobody warned anyone. Let me start with the bill that has done more quiet damage to household budgets than almost anything else, and that almost never gets discussed as a cost of living story. Car insurance. Here are the actual numbers. The average cost of full coverage car insurance in the United States in 2026 runs somewhere between roughly $2,100 and $2,500 a year, depending on which analysis you use, or roughly $200 a month. But the national average hides what actually happened to people. Between 2020 and 2025, car insurance rates in Texas rose 60.97%, almost 61% in 5 years. New Jersey's average premium went up 20% in a single year, in 2025, and now runs around $2,676. Drivers in Washington, D.C. paid the highest average in the country at roughly $4,000 a year. Louisiana drivers pay an average of about $3,481 for full coverage, and in 2026, analysts expect rates to increase in 35 states and fall in 15. Now here is the part that makes this a genuinely brutal cost, and why it hits differently than other bills. You cannot opt out. Every state but one requires insurance to drive legally. And in most of the country, you cannot get to work without a car. So this is a mandatory expense on a mandatory activity that has been rising far faster than wages, and there is no version of your budget where you simply decide not to have it. Why did it rise so much? The insurers are not lying about the causes, and it is worth understanding them. Vehicles got dramatically more expensive to repair. A bumper is no longer a bumper. It contains parking sensors, cameras, and radar units for collision avoidance. A minor parking lot scrape that used to be a $400 repair is now a $3,000 repair because the sensors have to be replaced and recalibrated. Medical costs on injury claims rose, litigation costs rose, severe weather losses rose, and in states with hail, flooding, and hurricanes, comprehensive claims went up substantially. Used vehicle values spiked, which raised what insurers pay on totaled cars. And there is a wild card the industry is openly nervous about, the effect of tariffs on auto repair parts, which analysts say has not yet been fully realized. So this is not primarily greed. It is a genuine cost spiral in the repair economy landing on a mandatory purchase. Now here is what you can actually do, and this is one of the areas with the most money available for the least effort. Shop it at every single renewal, not every 3 years, every renewal. Insurance pricing is not stable across companies, and the company that was cheapest for you 3 years ago is frequently not cheapest now. 5 of the 10 largest insurers were expected to lower rates in 2026, while others raised them. People who never shop are the ones subsidizing everyone who does. Check your deductible. Raising a $200 deductible to $500 can reduce collision and comprehensive costs by as much as 30%, according to the Insurance Information Institute. Only do this if you can actually cover the deductible in cash. But if you can, that is a large recurring saving. Understand the credit connection, because most people do not know it exists. In most states, your credit history factors into your auto premium. Insurers correlate credit history with claim likelihood. So improving your credit score, or correcting an error on your credit report, can directly lower your car insurance. That is a link almost nobody makes. Do the 10 times test on full coverage. If your car is worth less than roughly 10 times your annual premium, full coverage may not make sense and liability only may be the rational choice. That single decision can cut a premium substantially on an older vehicle. And check whether you are paying for things you already have. Roadside assistance and rental reimbursement are frequently already included with a credit card or an auto club membership, and people pay for them twice. Finally, ask about paying 6 or 12 months in full. Many insurers charge installment fees and offer a discount for paying up front, and if you can manage the cash flow, that is free money. 15 minutes of quotes at renewal is genuinely one of the highest return uses of time available to an American household right now. You turn 65, you enroll in Medicare, and then you find out about your teeth. Now I want to spend serious time here, because this is the one where I get the most messages, and where the shock is the greatest, and where the consequences are the most severe. You work your whole life, you pay into Medicare out of every paycheck for 40 years, you turn 65, you enroll, and then at some point in the following year, you find out what it does not cover. Original Medicare, meaning Parts A and B, does not cover routine dental care. No cleanings, no fillings, no extractions, no dentures, no implants. You pay the full cost yourself. It does not cover routine vision. No eye exams for glasses, no frames, no lenses. The one exception is that Medicare covers one pair of eyeglasses or contacts following cataract surgery. It does not cover hearing aids, and it does not cover the hearing exam if the purpose of the exam is to fit a hearing aid. It will cover a diagnostic hearing exam ordered by a doctor to diagnose a medical condition, which is a different thing. And it does not cover long-term custodial care, meaning help with daily living, which is what most people actually need eventually. AARP reports that 1 in 5 adults of Medicare age face over $2,000 annually in out-of-pocket costs from services original Medicare simply will not pay. Let me put real numbers on it, because $2,000 is abstract until you see the bills. In 2026, a single porcelain crown can exceed $1,500. A root canal can run over $1,000. Dentures run into the thousands. Hearing aids average somewhere between $2,000 and $6,000 per pair. So a retiree living on a Social Security check, who needs a crown and a pair of hearing aids in the same year, is looking at an expense in the range of $4,000 to $7,000 out of pocket with no coverage on a fixed income. And what happens? They do not get the crown. They do not get the hearing aids. That is the giving up in this video's title, and it is happening constantly, quietly, in millions of households. Now, why is it structured this way? Medicare was designed in 1965 as hospital and medical insurance, not comprehensive health coverage. Dental, vision, and hearing were treated as separate categories, and that framing was never revised even as the evidence mounted that all three are central to health outcomes in older adults. It is a 60-year-old design decision that nobody has fixed. Let me give you the options, because there are several, and people frequently do not know about most of them. Medicare Advantage plans, meaning Part C, are the most common route. Roughly 90% of Medicare Advantage plans offer some dental benefit, about 90% offer vision, and about 75% offer hearing. But read that carefully. Some dental benefit can mean 2 cleanings a year and a $500 annual cap that does not come close to covering a crown. When comparing plans, look past the premium at the annual dental maximum, whether major work like crowns and root canals is covered at all, the eyewear allowance and the hearing aid allowance. And there is a change you need to know about for this year. CMS tightened the rules on Medicare Advantage supplemental benefits in 2026, requiring them to be primarily health-related. As a result, some plans reduced their dental, vision, and hearing allowances, which means if you have been on the same Advantage plan for years and have not rechecked the benefit levels, they may not be what you think they are. If you have original Medicare with a Medigap policy, understand clearly that Medigap does not cover dental, vision, or hearing. Medigap covers coinsurance, deductibles, and hospital costs. Those services require separate insurance. Standalone dental plans run roughly $15 to $80 a month. Standalone vision runs roughly $10 to $30. Unlike Medicare Advantage, you can buy these any time of year, not just during open enrollment. And there is one genuinely important exception on dental that saves people real money. Medicare Part B does cover dental work when it is an integral part of a covered medical procedure. An oral exam before a heart valve replacement or an organ transplant. Treating a mouth infection before cancer treatment. Jaw reconstruction after an injury. In those cases, Part B covers 80% after the deductible, which is $283 in 2026. Most people have no idea that exception exists. If you are facing a major medical procedure, ask your doctor directly whether any required dental work qualifies. It is worth thousands, and the burden is on you to ask. Hearing aids dropped from $6,000 to a few hundred, and almost nobody was told. This next part is the reason I wanted to make this video, because it is a genuine piece of good news that will save some of you or your parents thousands of dollars, and the number of people who still do not know about it is astonishing. Since 2022, hearing aids for mild to moderate hearing loss have been available over the counter in the United States without a prescription, without an audiologist visit, without a fitting appointment. Before that change, buying a hearing aid meant going to an audiologist, getting an exam, and purchasing a device through that channel, and the all-in cost commonly ran $2,000 to $6,000 per pair. Medicare covered none of it. Today, FDA-regulated over-the-counter hearing aids run roughly $250 to $3,000, with genuinely functional devices available at the lower end of that range. You can buy them at a pharmacy, at big box retailers, and online. Let me be clear about what that means. For a large number of older Americans, the cost of addressing hearing loss dropped by somewhere between 70 and 90%, and many of them have not heard about it. Now I want to be precise, because I do not want anyone buying the wrong thing. Over-the-counter hearing aids are approved for adults 18 and over with perceived mild to moderate hearing loss. They are not appropriate for severe or profound loss, and they are not appropriate for children. If you have sudden hearing loss in only one ear, pain, drainage, dizziness, or ringing that started abruptly, those are medical warning signs, and you should see a doctor rather than buying a device. But for the enormous population of people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s with the gradual, age-related both ears hearing loss that makes restaurants impossible and forces the television volume up, this category is exactly what it was designed for. And there are other routes worth knowing. Standalone hearing discount programs, run by companies like True Hearing and Hear USA, cost roughly $0 to $30 a month and can be purchased year-round with no enrollment period. Many Medicare Advantage plans include a hearing aid allowance in the $500 to $2,500 range, and original Medicare Part B does cover cochlear implants when medically necessary, which is a different category entirely. Now let me tell you why I care about this so much, and why I would ask you to actually forward this section to someone. Untreated hearing loss is not a quality of life inconvenience. Research has consistently linked it to social isolation, depression, and accelerated cognitive decline. The mechanism appears to be partly that when hearing conversation becomes exhausting, people withdraw from it. They stop going to the restaurant. They stop going to church. They stop calling. And the isolation does the damage. So a person who cannot afford a $4,000 pair of hearing aids does not just miss some conversations. They gradually disappear from their own social world, and the health consequences of that are severe and well documented. Which means that a policy change that dropped the cost by 80% is one of the most consequential health developments for older Americans in the last decade, and it got a fraction of the coverage that far less important things received. If you have a parent who has been saying what a lot lately, who turns the television up, who has stopped going to noisy places, who seems to have withdrawn from conversation, this is worth $150 and an afternoon. Start with an over-the-counter device. If it does not help enough, that tells you the loss is beyond mild to moderate and you need an audiologist, and you have lost very little finding that out. This is the single most actionable thing in this entire video. Please use it. Skipping the dentist is the most expensive money-saving decision in American life. Let me stay on this because the dental gap deserves its own treatment, and because of all the things people give up when money is tight, this is the one that costs them the most in the end. Here is the pattern I want you to recognize. A cleaning costs somewhere in the range of $100 to $200. Money is tight, so it gets skipped. Then it gets skipped again. 2 years pass. A small cavity that would have been a $200 filling becomes a problem that needs a root canal and a crown, which together can run $2,000 or more. Money is even tighter than it was, so that gets postponed. The tooth abscesses. Now there is pain, there is infection, and there is an emergency room visit, because dental emergencies are one of the most common reasons uninsured Americans end up in an ER, where they can be given antibiotics and pain medication, but generally cannot receive actual dental treatment. So the ER visit costs several hundred to a couple $1,000s and does not fix the tooth. Eventually the tooth is extracted, which is cheaper than saving it. Then another. And then a person is missing teeth, which affects what they can eat, which affects their nutrition, which affects every other health condition they have. It affects how they speak. It affects whether they smile in a job interview. Every single step in that sequence was a rational short-term decision made by a person with no money. And the total cost in dollars and in life is a multiple of what the original $150 cleaning would have been. That is what I mean when I say skipping the dentist is the most expensive money-saving decision available. And the connection between oral health and the rest of the body is not soft science. Periodontal disease has documented associations with cardiovascular disease and with worse diabetes control. Chronic infection in the mouth is chronic infection in the body. So here is what I would actually do, and there are more options than most people realize. Dental schools. Every dental school in the country operates a clinic where students perform work under close faculty supervision, typically at somewhere between a third and a half of private practice prices. It takes longer, because everything gets checked. The quality is generally very good, precisely because it is being supervised. Search your state plus dental school clinic, federally qualified health centers. These are community health centers that receive federal funding, many of which have dental clinics, and they charge on a sliding scale based on your income. They are legally required to serve you regardless of ability to pay. The federal government maintains a searchable directory of them, and most Americans have never heard of it. Dental savings plans, which are different from insurance. You pay an annual membership fee, typically $100 to $200, and get a set discount at participating dentists. There is no annual maximum and no waiting period, which is the main advantage over dental insurance for someone facing immediate work. Ask the dentist directly for a payment plan. Many practices offer them and simply do not advertise them, and a dentist would rather do the work on a payment schedule than watch a patient leave and come back in 18 months with an emergency. If you are working, check whether your employer offers dental insurance you declined, and note the timing. Most dental plans have waiting periods of 6 to 12 months for major work, which means the time to enroll is before you need it, not after. And if you have a health savings account or a flexible spending account, dental work is a qualified expense, which means you are paying for it with pre-tax dollars. That is an immediate discount equal to your tax rate. One last thing. If a dentist gives you a large treatment plan, ask them to sequence it by urgency. Ask which items are urgent, which are important but can wait 6 months, and which are elective. A good dentist will do that willingly. Many people look at a $6,000 plan, decide it is impossible, and do nothing at all, when in fact $1,500 of it was urgent, and the rest could have waited a year. The starter home your parents bought does not exist anymore, and that was a choice. Let me shift to housing, and specifically to a question somebody asked that I think is one of the sharpest observations in this whole conversation. Where are the starter homes? Think about what your parents bought. Roughly 1,000 square feet, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, maybe 1.5. Frequently no garage, no homeowners association, on a modest lot. It was not impressive, and it was not meant to be. It was a place to start, and you built equity in it and eventually traded up. Now drive through any new construction in America. 2,000 square feet or more, which is double. 3 bedrooms minimum, frequently 4 or 5. 2 to 3 car garages, and almost always inside a homeowners association. That is not an accident, and it is not primarily builder greed. It is the result of several forces that all push the same direction, and understanding them tells you why this will not fix itself quickly. Zoning. Enormous portions of American residential land are zoned for single-family detached homes on minimum lot sizes. If a municipality requires a minimum lot of a quarter acre, and land in that market costs a certain amount per acre, the builder has a fixed land cost per house before laying a single brick. And when your land cost is fixed and high, building a small cheap house on it makes no financial sense. You have to build a big expensive house to justify the lot. That single mechanism explains most of it. The starter home did not die because nobody wants one. It died because the land it would sit on is too expensive to put a small house on. Fixed costs, permitting, impact fees, utility connections, surveying and inspections are largely the same for a small house as for a large one. So those costs are a much larger percentage of a modest home's price, which pushes builders up market where the margin is. Labor. Construction labor has been tight and expensive for years. When a builder can only complete a limited number of homes in a season, each one had better be profitable, which means bigger, and regulation and buyer expectation drifted upward together over decades, until a 1,000 square foot new build became something almost nobody produces. Now the HOA question, because that also has a specific cause. Municipalities figured out that if a developer creates a homeowners association, that association takes over maintenance of roads, drainage, lighting, and common areas that the city would otherwise maintain with tax revenue. So requiring an HOA lets a city add housing without adding to its own maintenance budget. That is why it is nearly universal in new construction now. It is a cost transfer from the municipality to the homeowner, and the homeowner pays it every month forever. So what does a person actually do with this? Look at existing homes rather than new construction. Because the small houses still exist, they were just built in 1958. Older neighborhoods in older parts of towns are where the actual starter housing stock in this country lives, and it is frequently cheaper per square foot than anything new. Look at manufactured housing seriously, and understand that it has changed enormously. Modern HUD code manufactured homes are built to a federal standard and are not what your grandmother thought of as a trailer. The catch is land and financing, so pay close attention to whether you own the land or lease a lot, because that distinction determines whether you build equity. Look into whether your state or city has a first-time buyer program, because most do, and they are chronically underused. Down payment assistance, below-market rate loans, and closing cost grants exist in nearly every state and require an application almost nobody submits. And if you are in a position to influence it, pay attention to zoning votes in your town. Whether small homes, duplexes, or accessory dwelling units can be built legally is decided at exactly the local level we keep coming back to. In meetings almost nobody attends. The starter home was not taken from you by a conspiracy. It was zoned out of existence, one municipal vote at a time, over 40 years, mostly by people who thought they were protecting property values. And it can be zoned back in the same way. A director position advertised at $19 an hour tells you what happened to the middle. Somebody sitting at work, scrolling job listings, came across a director-level position advertised at $19 an hour, and their reaction was exactly right. Why do you think I am directing anything or anybody for $19? That listing is a perfect specimen of something that has happened across the American labor market, and that almost nobody has named properly. So let me name it. It is called title inflation, and it is the mirror image of wage stagnation. Here is the mechanism. An employer wants to attract applicants and wants existing employees to feel they are progressing, but cannot or will not raise pay. So it does the one thing that costs nothing. It upgrades the title. The cashier becomes a sales associate. The sales associate becomes a customer experience specialist. The shift supervisor becomes an assistant manager. The assistant manager becomes a director. And the pay moves a fraction of what the title implies, or does not move at all. This is genuinely widespread, and it has two effects that are worth understanding. The first is that it destroys the information value of a resume. If titles no longer correspond to responsibility or compensation levels, then a hiring manager cannot tell what a candidate actually did, and a candidate cannot tell what a job actually is. Everybody has to guess, and the guessing wastes enormous amounts of everyone's time. The second is more insidious. A title upgrade is frequently used to reclassify a worker as exempt from overtime. If you are moved from an hourly position to a salaried management title, you may lose overtime eligibility, and if the job still requires 50 hours a week, your effective hourly wage went down while your title went up. The rules on this are specific and involve both a salary threshold and an actual duties test, and misclassification is common enough that the Department of Labor pursues it regularly. So if you have been promoted to a manager or director title and your hours went up while your take-home barely moved, that is worth examining rather than celebrating. Now let me connect this to the larger question people keep asking, which is where the middle went. Somebody put it as directly as it can be put. Why is there nothing that is middle class anymore? You either live in the trenches or you pay thousands a month. That polarization is real, and it shows up in category after category. There is luxury housing, and there is distressed housing with thinning inventory between them. There are premium goods, and there are cheap disposable goods with the durable mid-priced item vanishing. There are high-paying professional jobs and low-paying service jobs, with the mid-skill jobs that used to bridge them substantially automated or offshored. The technical term for this in labor economics is job polarization, and it has been documented across developed economies for decades. Employment growth concentrated at the top and the bottom of the wage distribution while the middle hollowed out, because the middle contained the routine, codifiable tasks that were easiest to automate or relocate. That was not a conspiracy. It was the predictable result of technology plus trade policy operating over 40 years without anyone building a bridge for the people standing in the middle. And that is why so much conventional advice lands badly right now. Just work hard and move up assumes there is a ladder with rungs in the middle. When those rungs have been removed, the advice is not encouragement, it is a description of a route that no longer exists. So practically, if you are in a role that is routine and codifiable, meaning it follows consistent rules and processes, take that seriously as a signal rather than an insult, and move deliberately toward work that requires physical presence, human judgment, licensure, or relationship. Trades, healthcare, skilled maintenance, anything that requires being somewhere and touching something. Verify your overtime classification if you carry a management title and work long hours. And when you evaluate a job, ignore the title entirely and look at three things: the actual pay, the actual hours, and the actual benefits. The title is marketing. Those three numbers are the job. You have a legal right to your own eyeglass prescription, and most people have never used it. Let me give you another one where there is real money sitting on the table, because vision is the quietest of the three Medicare gaps, and the one where the markup is most extreme. Here is the situation. Original Medicare does not cover routine eye exams for glasses, and it does not cover frames or lenses. The one exception is a single pair of eyeglasses or contact lenses after cataract surgery. So you pay for the exam, and then you pay for the glasses. And if you have ever priced a pair of progressive lenses in an optical shop, you know that the number can be astonishing. Several $100s is routine. $600 or $700 is not unusual. Now here is the part that most Americans have never been told, and it is a federal rule that has been on the books for decades. Under the Federal Trade Commission's Eyeglass rule, the person who performs your eye exam is required to give you a copy of your eyeglass prescription immediately after the exam is completed, at no extra charge, whether or not you ask for it. There is a parallel rule for contact lenses. You do not have to buy glasses where you got the exam. You never did. The prescription is yours. That single fact is worth hundreds of dollars a year to a lot of households, because once you have that piece of paper in your hand, you can take it anywhere. Online retailers routinely sell complete pairs with quality lenses for a fraction of optical shop pricing. Warehouse clubs sell glasses at substantially lower prices than standalone optical shops. Some retailers will put new lenses into frames you already own, which eliminates the frame cost entirely, and there is one measurement you should ask for while you are there, because it trips people up. To order glasses online, you generally need your pupillary distance, the measurement between the centers of your pupils. Some offices will provide it, and some will not, since it is not always considered part of the prescription. You can measure it yourself with a ruler and a mirror, and most online retailers walk you through it, but it is easier to simply ask at the exam. Now, I want to be fair to independent optical shops, because they are not villains. A good optician provides genuine value on complex prescriptions, on fitting, and on adjustments. And if you have a difficult prescription or bifocal alignment issues, that expertise is worth paying for. I am not telling you to abandon a professional who has taken care of your eyes for 20 years. What I am telling you is that you should know you have a choice, because a lot of people have spent their entire lives believing the prescription belonged to the office. And one more piece of practical advice on this. If you need glasses and money is genuinely tight, look into Lions Clubs International, which runs eyeglass assistance programs in communities across the country, and has for decades. Many local chapters will cover exams and glasses for people who cannot afford them. It is free, it is local, and almost nobody thinks to ask. The biggest financial risk you face is the one Medicare most clearly does not cover. I want to close the coverage section with the gap that is by far the largest, that gets discussed the least, and that has quietly destroyed more middle-class savings than anything else on this list. Long-term custodial care. Medicare does not cover it. Let me be precise about what that means, because the distinction confuses almost everyone. Medicare covers skilled care. If you have a hip replacement and need rehabilitation, or you need wound care from a nurse, that is skilled care, and Medicare will cover a limited period of it under specific conditions. Custodial care is different. Custodial care is help with the activities of daily living: bathing, dressing, eating, using the bathroom, moving from a bed to a chair. It is not medical treatment, it is assistance with being a person, and that is precisely what the majority of people eventually need, for months or years, and Medicare does not pay for it. Not in a facility and not at home. The costs are substantial. A home health aid for meaningful daily hours runs into the tens of thousands of dollars a year. Assisted living runs higher. Nursing home care is higher still, frequently well into six figures annually, depending on where you live. And these costs have been rising faster than general inflation for years, driven by the same care worker shortage that makes it hard for families to find help at any price. So what actually happens to people? Three things, and none of them is good. The first is that a family member quits or reduces their job to provide the care, which is unpaid, which means the cost is absorbed as lost income, lost retirement contributions, and lost career progression, overwhelmingly by women. The second is that savings get spent down. A couple who spent 40 years accumulating a nest egg watches it disappear in 3 years of facility care. The third is Medicaid, which does cover long-term care, but only after you have spent down assets to qualify. And Medicaid has a 5-year look-back period, meaning it examines asset transfers made in the 5 years before application, and improper transfers trigger a penalty period of ineligibility. So the strategy of giving assets to your children when you need care does not work, and people who try it without proper planning frequently create a disaster. Now, what do you actually do about this? I am not going to pretend there is an easy answer, because there is not, and anyone who tells you otherwise is selling something. But here are the honest options. Long-term care insurance exists, and it is genuinely expensive and has gotten more so, and premiums on older policies have been raised substantially. It makes the most sense for people in a middle band of wealth. Enough assets to be worth protecting. Not enough to self-fund. If you are considering it, the time is your 50s or early 60s, because premiums rise sharply with age, and health issues can make you uninsurable. Hybrid policies that combine life insurance with a long-term care benefit have become more common, partly because they address the use it or lose it objection people have to traditional coverage. Veterans should look at VA aid and attendance, a benefit available to certain wartime veterans and surviving spouses that provides a monthly payment for care needs. It is chronically underused, and many eligible families have never heard of it. And the single most valuable thing you can do costs nothing. Have the conversation now in daylight while everyone is healthy. Who would provide care? Where? What resources exist? What the person actually wants? Whether powers of attorney and healthcare directives are in place and where the documents are. Families that had that conversation in advance make decisions. Families that did not make them in a hospital hallway at 2 a.m, under pressure, with a social worker asking for a discharge plan by tomorrow. That conversation is uncomfortable for about 20 minutes, and it is worth more than almost anything else in this video. Before you give up on anything else, these are the ones worth fighting for. Let me bring this together, because I have given you a lot of numbers, and the point of all of it is to be useful rather than just accurate. Here is the framework I would ask you to use. There are things you can give up that cost you almost nothing long-term, and there are things that look identical in the moment but that compound into something much worse. And the tragedy is that under financial pressure, people frequently cut the second category because it is the one where the consequences are delayed. The things that are genuinely fine to give up and that you should not feel 1 ounce of shame about are the ones where the cost is social or emotional rather than compounding. Restaurants, streaming services, vacations, new clothes, the gym membership you do not use, gifts that exceed what you can afford, the wedding you cannot travel to. Those hurt, and they are real losses, and they do not get worse over time. You can pick them back up later. The ones that compound and that you should fight much harder to protect are these. Preventive health care, especially dental. We walk through that sequence. A $150 cleaning becomes a $2,000 crown, becomes an emergency room visit, becomes an extraction. Whatever your situation, find the dental school, the federally qualified health center, or the payment plan, because this one has the steepest compounding curve of anything on the list. Hearing and vision. Not because of vanity, but because the isolation that follows untreated hearing loss has documented links to depression and cognitive decline, and because the over-the-counter change since 2022 means the cost barrier is a fraction of what it was. If you take one thing from this video, take that one. Prescription medication. Rationing medication is one of the most expensive decisions a person can make, because uncontrolled chronic conditions produce hospitalizations that cost 50 times what the prescription did. Nearly every major manufacturer runs a patient assistance program. Most people never apply, and pharmacy discount cards can cut generic costs dramatically. Ask your pharmacist directly what the cash price is with a discount card versus your insurance copay, because sometimes the cash price is lower and they are not permitted to volunteer that unless you ask. Your car's basic maintenance, oil changes, tires and brakes. Deferring maintenance on the vehicle that gets you to work is how a $200 problem becomes a $2,000 problem, and then becomes a job loss. Your insurance coverage. Dropping coverage to save a premium is a bet that nothing will happen, and if you lose that bet, you lose everything else at once. And relationships. This is the one nobody puts on a financial list, and it belongs there. When people are ashamed about money, they withdraw, they stop returning calls, skip the gathering, avoid the friend who might ask how things are going. And then when something genuinely bad happens, there is nobody to call. In every study of how households survive crises, the strongest predictor is not income. It is whether there was somebody to call. Now let me say the last thing, and I want to say it plainly. If you have been feeling like a failure, I want you to hear that the arithmetic you are up against was not designed with you in mind and did not exist in this form when the advice you were given was written. The person who worked 24 years with a master's degree and cannot fund her daughter's sport did not make a mistake. The man who has been at one company 15 years and is drowning did not make a mistake. The woman in nursing school with 3 past due bills, cleaning houses and driving deliveries on the side, is not lazy, and she said so herself, and she was right, and she should not have had to say it. You are dealing with a genuine structural gap between what things cost and what work pays, and no amount of personal discipline closes a gap that large. So do the things you can control, because they are real and the money is real. Shop the insurance, get the over-the-counter hearing aids, find the dental school, ask the pharmacist for the cash price, check the exemptions and the programs. Every dollar you recover is a dollar of buffer between you and a bad month, and then be gentle with yourself about the rest of it, because the rest of it is not yours to carry alone. Take care of yourselves out there and call somebody who has gone quiet.